tone for that. Mamedyarov, meanwhile, he's been playing a lot as well lately, and he's been in decent form. So, okay, he gets things started. It's d4. It's Queen's Pawn opening, Rapport. Who knows what he'll play? He's a maverick when it comes to choosing openings as well. He often chooses some very weird, wacky stuff just to get the opponent thinking from an early stage. And, okay, will we see the Nimzo Indian? Will we see King's Indian defense? Rapport, okay, he pushes this pawn.
Maybe a King's Indian. Maybe we'll see your beloved opening, the Grunfeld. Who knows? I mean, the one thing that I must say about Rapport is that whenever he surprises us is by playing mainstream openings. We're so used to seeing the quirky stuff from him. And, OK, he is not going to go for David's favourite just yet. I have to reel back my words in a little bit. And now, OK, now we have Mamedyarov also playing one of his favourite kind of openings where he pushes his g-pawn one square in order to develop the light square to the longest diagonal on the board.
Yeah, that white bishop when it sits on g2 will be fantastic, and I think this is just intended to frustrate Rapport. Rapport wanted white to occupy the centre with pawns. He wanted white to gain as much space as possible so that he would have targets to counterattack later on. Meanwhile, this black knight move, very ambitious. Maybe not the most common either. Black now will try and counter the white centre with a pawn of his own on the next turn. So depending on what white does, black will strike back.
Yeah, and here comes the quirky move. You know, it has been played before, but this pawn move is actually a little bit rare. It's actually been played by Wesley So to defeat Jordan van Forest and the Chessball Masters. So that was a very long game. It was interesting, actually, to have access to the database here because Mamedyarov had actually played this particular line until this pawn move, and it was in a game that he'd lost. So I always wonder how much preparation, how much knowledge the opponent has. And after... Hang on, let me just get these moves up.
OK, so white, meanwhile, occupying the centre with as many pawns as possible. This is... ambitious, trying to take all the central squares. This has, however, left a target, as we mentioned, for Richard Rapport. At least now he knows what he has to attack, and that is the white pawn centre. So one of the black pawns will push forward, black temporarily as well, ahead in piece development. If you see the white pieces, white's king still in the centre, white's kingside knight still sat at home. That means you have to do something quickly. You have to act. And Rapport does that. Very strange. He just pushed this pawn one square. He's pushed it again on the next move. He forgot that pawns can move forward 2 squares on their first go. Either that, or he was trying to be trying to do something very, very clever on this last turn. So he's lost a tempo willingly by moving this pawn twice. But now at least the black knight, when things block up in the centre, the black knight can occupy this key square in the centre.
Yeah. I was a bit surprised by this double pawn move he made with the e-pawn. I was expecting something a little bit more safer, you know, that maybe he would curl up into a ball just for the time being and just wait it out.
We need an action replay here, Vanka, because if this black pawn had pushed forward 2 squares immediately, if it had marched forward to e5, then suddenly after the white pawn steps forward, black's knight could jump in, as it has done in the game, but it would just get kicked away, and the knight has to retreat, run away. That's not ideal, that's not great. But by pushing the pawn forward 1 square, in this position, by pushing the pawn forward to e6, waiting for white to commit, and then pushing it forward a 2nd square, yes, he's lost a move as black, so white has gained this pawn push for free, but because the white pawn is now on e4, in this position, after the knight jumps in, now this knight is on an outpost. This white pawn, because it's committed itself, cannot kick away the black knight. So it's very sophisticated. It's a bit too advanced for me. I would never dream of pushing a pawn 2 squares forward, kind of in mini steps. I would want to save time, but Rapport is not biased. He doesn't care there. And this knight now is actually quite hard to get rid of. If you attack it with your own knight, then black will probably just cement this pawn, push this pawn forward to cement the knight, now defending it this way, and white can actually capture en passant here, capturing the black pawn as if it just moved 1 square, but now after a recapture, black again defends this knight with his pawn, defends his knight with his queen as well. So this knight hard to get rid of.
And, well, Mamedyarov is actually going to try. Do you think we're going to see something super wild, like opposite side castling?
Ooh.
That would be very Mamedyarov.
I was thinking that. But now, actually, that he's put his knight on this particular square, I'm kind of going off the idea of putting the king on opposite ends.
So you were thinking, for example, maybe bring the bishop forward.
Yeah.
At some point, lifting the queen up one square. So, for example, if black just waits, moving the queen up, castling the king this flank.
Yeah, and then push forward with the pawns. Have the time of your life. Maybe do or die by your own sword.
If they were playing for the fans rather than playing for points, they would definitely do this. But, OK, in the current position, it's a pity we didn't see that. Instead, white's knight was attacking the black knight, and Rapport did, as expected, push his pawn forward,
but wait,
solidifying in the centre.
OK, well, we have to do some maths here. There might be some capture the pawn in the centre.
Yeah, white's knight can take a pawn. And black's knight now, I guess, would jump out the way. This knight, we note, is not protected. White's king as well in the centre, so there might be some ideas of a rook shifting across later to attack the white king. But knight takes pawn, I guess. I'm not sure which pawn to capture in the centre. Suddenly, two knights up for grabs. Black's knight en prise, as we would say, attacked. And this knight also attacked. And as Jovanka mentioned, you can do some maths. It's like a kind of who can give up their piece for the most reward, most compensation here. White can give up this knight for a pawn, for example, hoping that the knight is captured so that you can gain the black knight next move at a high price. But the problem is black's knight will take this knight, and suddenly the white queen is attacked, and it's too complicated in general to calculate. But the players, they are trying to work this out. That's why Mamedyarov's taking some time. In general, the rule is this kind of stuff won't work for white if your king is in the center of the board. This king is too open. So we do see the first knight capture, but after the black knight takes, I don't think we'll see any more fun and games from Mamedyarov.
No, definitely not. I have a question for you, because I mentioned that it's about maths. When we start off playing chess, often it's very difficult to visualize so far in ahead. And often you see lots of people use their fingers.
Yeah.
Like they are there. Is this allowed?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Are you allowed to start
I guess if
going?
you don't say things out loud.
I don't know. We need some arbiters to tweet us the solution. Are you allowed to kind of gesticulate and try to work out your calculations? Because I can tell you, when I'm solving puzzles, I'm not above doing that myself.
For example, anyone who's watched the streams of Hikaru Nakamura would know that he would do this on a chessboard. He would say, there, 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 and then the arrows would just go on and on and on. And most people have no idea what he's talking about, but he's actually formulating a path for his brain to think. So all of these arrows I've just showed, it would be a capture, followed by a recapture, followed by another capture, followed by another capture, and at the end, black wins with a check. So he would be saying there. But as it's basically a way of what Jovanka's saying, it's kind of pointing just to keep it in. I think anyone could see these ideas given enough time, but it's just about keeping it in the right order and making sure you haven't messed up along the way. So it's interesting what Jovanka says. I haven't seen anyone do that out loud for a long, long time since I was a kid. But if we go back to the game, meanwhile, we did actually reach this position. Knight takes pawn, does walk into a queen check. So instead, we saw white castle his king to safety and now attack this black queen. So no more long, long variations that are confusing with loads of arrows. It's just a simple one-move threat. And the black queen really needs to get out the way. You don't want to block this bishop attack with your pawn, because when the bishop moves, then suddenly there's a threat against your rook. But also, the black bishop in the center of the board is trapped. It has no squares. Once the black rook goes to safety, suddenly this bishop is a goner. It's just leaving the board on the next turn. So instead, black's queen moved away. I don't really like this square. It looks a bit odd, I must say. I just don't understand why the queen didn't, for example, go to this square, at least attacking a pawn.
Yeah.
But now maybe Mamedyarov can use this square as a launching pad for an attack at some point, throw in a check. You could definitely imagine a situation where white starts pushing pawns towards the black king.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that you could push your pawns forward, and once the bishop steps back, I mean, it's very tempting to also give a check to the king, and
forcing the king into the corner. One thing black definitely doesn't want to do is trade off his pride and joy, the dark square bishop, because suddenly look at the dark squares around the black king. If the white queen ever lands here, it's simply checkmate. So white's queen will do a little dance, try to creep into the dark squares. This bishop too strong.
Could it be a mouse slip by Mamedyarov that he dropped his queen one square too early?
By a Rapport, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
By Rapport, sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Why this square?
Yeah.
It just looks so passive. I mean, it's still it's a safe square, but what's it doing here? And I like that variation Jovanka showed, pushing pawns forward, kind of gaining momentum, threatening the bishop, next move threatening the king, and then maybe pushing again forward, try to sneak in the queen this way towards the black king. I think this would be fantastically strong. But, OK, instead, very solid move there from Mamedyarov, just moving his rook across. Still ideas of jumping in with a knight. Nasty check, if that happens.
Actually, I took a peek at the computer evaluation, and for that reason, and only that reason, white had an amazing position.
Wow.
And
so a small kind of window of opportunity there missed
Yep.
by Mamedyarov.
And now Richard is fine. He just has to consolidate his king position. And this is why he pushes forward with his pawn to attack the knight and also take control of that important f6 square.
Yeah, so slightly counterintuitive, this last move by Rapport. It looks like he's weakening the black king by stepping forward with this pawn, but it's more important to kick away the white knight from any active squares. So the white knight now forced to retreat, simply, and at least then Rapport has 2 or 3 moves with which to consolidate. If black can move his light-squared bishop, get the black rook out of the corner, centralize it, then black's pieces are all actually looking great. The black queen's still not ideal, but other than that,
Yeah.
it's back in the balance again.
It's certainly back on the balance. I actually quite like Rapport's position. You know, his pieces, suddenly the queen that we kind of criticised moving to the 7th row can actually divert itself to stepping forward to move forward to in front of its king, and it has a lot of dexterity. And black has a lot of the pawn breaks, so definitely a very, very complicated position. And I'm just curious, I mean, both these players are actually playing from Germany, right? Because they've both been playing in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I'm dying to see how they get on, because they have to play a complicated game after having played a very long classical game. So it's always going to be very intriguing whether their stamina holds up. And talking about locations and where the players are playing from, we also love it when you guys tell us and show us where you guys are watching the show and all the action from. And to kick us off, JMR18 has sent us a selfie and says he's watching us from the local Greek restaurant.
Oh!
So good food and, of course, entertainment and good chess as well.
Maybe on a summer holiday in Greece.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Even better. OK, so if you want to make us jealous, send us your tweets using the hashtag #ChessChamps.
Yeah, where are you following the FTX Summer of Chess? We have partnered up with FTX both for this tournament, the road to Miami, and the next tournament, the big major in Miami, the FTX Crypto Cup. So maybe you are following us from outside or at some holiday location. Share your selfies. We want to see where you're watching from. And we do have a move.
We do have a move. White's knight simply stepping back to a safe square. And, yeah, I mean, poor Rapport. He probably wants a holiday after the candidates, after this tournament. And, I mean, before that, he was playing in other events before the candidates. Yeah, it's been a long few months for him. Mamedyarov, too, actually. He's been playing a lot. Some online chess, some over-the-board chess.
Look at Mamedyarov, just deep in thought. And you did mention the candidates. Richard Rapport, he ended in last place out of the 8 players competing in the candidates. What went wrong for him? And of course, comment on the move if it's something interesting happening.
Black just connecting the rooks, developing a piece, very sensible. Yeah, for Rapport, it was a tournament of 2 halves. The first half, he drew, I think it was his first 5 games. And then he met Jan Nepomniachtchi at a really critical moment. Nepomniachtchi's already won a couple of games at this point. And Rapport, he walked into some opening preparation, which led to a forced draw. So the game should have been a draw. Rapport was surprised. He thought for over 1 hour against Nepomniachtchi, and then he decided not to take the draw. But by refusing the draw, he immediately walked into a losing position. And he lost the game. In a way, he gifted Nepomniachtchi kind of a shot at the title, which he later took. And I think he just never recovered from their Rapport. He actually won a game in the next round, but then second half of the event, he just fell apart. I think he had, 3 losses in the second half as well. So it's difficult. Again, just like Duda, it's his first time in the candidates tournament. Are we about to see a cool move? We do see a cool sacrifice from Mamedyarov meanwhile. So we have to jump back to the game. But yeah, learning experience for Rapport, and he'll be back. Meanwhile, there has been some action. If we just repeat the last couple of moves, a bit of an action replay. White's bishop jumped in, attacking this black rook. And after the rook moved, we saw a sacrifice from Mamedyarov, the first sacrifice of the game. We knew it was going to happen at some point. He gave up his rook for this very strong black bishop. And after the rook was captured, he pushed his pawn forward. And wow, OK, a mistake then from Mamedyarov. But let's catch up. The queen was attacked. The queen did move. And this was the mistake, maybe. Was it a mistake, though? It looks so strong. It looks so natural. The white knight jumping in, hitting the black queen, and the black queen taking a pawn. But look at what's about to happen. The black queen is about to move because she's hit by the white rook. And when she does move out the way, white's rook might just come up and take this pawn. There are also some ideas of knight checks in the air. This knight check, hitting the king, hitting the bishop, will force black to give back the material. The rook will now have to give itself up for this knight. And suddenly, I love white's position, I've got to say. At least in practical terms, I just don't see any defenders around this black king. I'm looking at this white bishop sitting there nice and pretty, but it's about to do some nasty checking of the black king. And I'm also looking at the white queen later. It takes a while, but later you could try and sneak her in to deliver checkmate as well. This looks really scary. Rapport, however, is 2 pawns up. If we reach this position, he still has 2 extra pawns for black. It's just about whether those can survive. I mean, to be honest, the more I look at it, the more I love white's position. Also, this very strong passed pawn in the centre. It just looks terrible for black.
It looks absolutely awful. You know, there's no solace to be found anywhere. You know, the passed pawn you mentioned, that's going to be great. Oh, and it's going to happen, David.
Yeah. So in the current position, this is a check, and this knight cannot be tolerated. If you move your king, then you simply lose your bishop. That is not good. So you have to get rid of this knight. Why is Rapport even thinking? I'm not so sure. But, yeah, as Ivanka says, it's looking terrible. This bishop attacking a pawn. OK, this is the current position. This pawn attacked, and black's king almost terminally weak. So it's going to be very difficult here.
I mean, even an endgame, if you manage to trade off the queens, is not going to help black because white has this amazing passed pawn. It's not the quantity of pawns you have, it's the quality. And that pawn, it's a monster. And if you don't trade off queens, then you always have to worry. You know, rook is going to come into the 7th rank. If it's not a rook, it's a queen that's also going to snake her way into the dark squares. No. And also, it's not just that, it's also a light square bishop that's going to come and deliver some horrible checks. And there's a pawn up for, no, I mean, it's just a long list of what is wrong with black's position.
But then the computer favors black.
You guys are basically definitely disagreeing with the bar right now.
And I'm trying to find a reason, to be honest, unless it's something really concrete that we haven't seen. I'm looking at black's bishop, for example, attacking the white queen here. I don't think this really helps. Maybe the idea is that you can trade off this light square bishop, but I was just wondering, why can't white trade off these bishops now and march this white pawn forward? It just looks very, very strong. This pawn is about to make a new queen and cost black a rook.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the players, because it's a mystery to me. What are the players thinking? From a human point of view, this looks great for white. A computer point of view, though, not clear at all.
OK.
Mamedyarov looks happy, though.
Well, Mamedyarov is an element, right? This is the position that he thrives in.
He's 2 pawns down, but, I mean, he's sacrificed a lot more for a lot less than this. So, yeah, it's really it's really bemusing. I'm just struggling to understand what can the computer see that we don't see here. It just looks fantastic for white.
Should we take up the stockfish to see what
let's see what move
stockfish wants to suggest for Richard Rapport?
OK, so actually, maybe there's only one move to maintain the balance. Everything else does give white an advantage, as we are predicting here. And this knight check, the black knight jumping into the e2 square, that is not 100% obvious. It's on the radar, of course, because all top players look for checks and then captures and then threats in that order. But it needs to be followed up. And
I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. Let's jump in, because the knight check on its own would not be logical. It has to have a follow-up. So the knight check, defended by the black queen. The white king is just going to move. And what next? Is the idea for the black knight to jump back, attacking the queen, attacking the rook?
But, I mean, the knight is just going to get, and the queen are just going to get caught offside. For instance, I mean, for starters, you can move the queen 1 square on the dark squares.
Hitting the knight, and if the knight captures the rook, whoops. This is going to...
Checkmate ends the game.
Yeah. I just don't see how the king escapes. This is going to be checkmate. Is there a glitch with Stockfish? Are we missing something really obvious here?
I mean, is there some kind of funny thing with, instead of taking the rook, black?
So with this knight check, this is what the computer says first. The white king will just move out the way to any safe square. What is next? Because this is just a killer threat now. The white queen is trying to get in with a check. I don't think Rapport's going to find this move. Even if there is a solution, even if the computers find something, it's just not human to allow the white queen into your position like this. And, I mean, if you look at where the knight is right now, at least the knight blocks the white queen from entering on the d-file. So I don't think you'll find that move. The other moves, we should mention Stockfish also suggests bishop to c6, this square. This is very logical, challenging the white bishop. We showed that this is maybe a decent try, but it would allow, for example, a trade and white's pawn to run through. Black's bishop was previously blockading this pawn, and the bishop's gone now, so this pawn might be a decider. So that, from a human point of view, is scary. And the other move that the computer suggests, I can tell you for a fact this will not happen. Black's rook just sliding across one square. Rook b8, that's very passive. So the third choice for Stockfish, that's not Rapport's instinct. I've never seen him go passive in his life. He wants to fight fire with fire. He doesn't want to just say, OK, I'm just going to take a time out. I guess the idea is that you stop the white rook from entering the position on this square, but it's just so slow, and it does nothing to stop the white bishop jumping in. So from a human point of view, very, very difficult, at least for Rapport.
Well, I really hope now he will make that knight jump so that we can get an answer from Stockfish. What is the follow-up from this strange move?
And all the while, Mamedyarov just looks a bit casual, right? One eye on the computer, one eye on some drink, I want to say.
I think a mixture of snacks and drinks that Mamedyarov's enjoying, and why not? You need some fuel for the rapid chess, and it's been a long day for him playing in the Bundesliga.
Yeah. I'm so impressed by that. Yeah. Incredible.
They're all marathon runners, basically, these guys. Yeah. Non-stop chess.
5 minutes now on this move for Richard Rapport.
Yeah, it's a critical position, you know. It's win or lose time, you know. Everything will hinge on whether he can find a resource. We can't see it. Stockfish has broken us, or we've broken Stockfish. We don't know. But we don't get what Stockfish is trying to say is Black's defence.
And Rapport, he's just kind of stretching in a way. He's trying to psych himself up because he knows it's a very difficult position. I mean, even if you can handle the first wave of the attack, the first 2 or 3 threats, there will be a second wave. There will be more threats to come a bit later on. So even if the computer says Black is fine for the next 3 or 4 moves, it's beyond that. He will still have to defend, and Black's king just 0 defenders around it. I just, from a practical point of view, can't see any hope really here. Maybe I'm just too negative. I think I've just seen too many amazing attacks by Mamedyarov, and I've been on the wrong side of some of those attacks occasionally. So, Mamedyarov, I think, a big favourite right now, just from the body language, the clock, the type of position on the board.
Yeah.
This is so tense.
Yeah, it's a key moment. Yeah. If he doesn't find any of those 3 top moves, because none of them were obvious. Maybe the second one, the black bishop moving, that is the most obvious out of all of them, but it has a clear downside to it. OK, he moves his bishop. I mentioned that this is on the radar, attacking the white queen, but the white...
Oh, look at that. Is that a blunder?
It is a blunder.
I think we're going to see a nice checkmating attack. White's light-squared bishop now is going to come to the centre of the board, giving a check. And I'm trying to work out, Jovanka, can White just give up the queen?
That's
I think
what I'm working out. We've got to show it, right? Because it is possible it's going to be a brutal mating attack.
Let's keep an eye on the players. Look at Mamedyarov, though. Look at the laser-sharp focus that he's suddenly got on his face. He is super interested in this position, and that's because right now White can give a check, hitting the black king. Only one safe square to go to. You have to move, and now you can give up the white queen. You can ignore the threat against her. OK, the first check's on the board. You can bring your rook up the board, take a pawn, and after the queen drops, suddenly you give a check. This is very simple. If the king goes to the centre, wow, he sacrificed his queen. He didn't even think. And now this would be checkmate if the king goes to the centre. If it goes the other way, then this is checkmate as well. Look at this. The king will be checkmated in the corner of the board, a double check. And we have a result. Amazing checkmate there from Mamedyarov.
Wow, after 26 moves, it is over between